Hello and welcome to my June highlights. Now I know I say this every month, but June's gone past incredibly quickly and I can't believe it's July already. So what's been going on in June? Well, there's been a lot that's been happening. I did go away on holiday just towards the end of the month, so that has affected sales slightly. We've also had the launch of 8.2 right at the end of the month, so that's seen a massive transition from a lot of my professions, enchanting, tailoring and cooking and leatherworking. They've all had their upper level BFA end products increased to another tier, so that effectively has wiped out all of those things that I've had before, and I'm going to have to restart, relearn the new ones and come back in afresh come July. So I'm just working on that now. We did see a bit of a tail off in sales as I think people were preparing for 8.2 coming out and perhaps not necessarily buying as much, knowing that everything was going to change. So let's have a look at my summary. Okay, so here's my accounting summary for June. As always, I've exported this out of the TSM app and converted it into pivot tables and then condensed everything into separate professions so I can see what's sold for each one. So let's start with tailoring. We've got some good general old world bits and pieces, the shoes and the shirts and the robes, those kind of things are ticking through quite nicely. As you see, I had a good sale there of cindercloth pants, quite nice, at 2,300. Then we've got 5 hexweave bags, and then moving on, silkweave satchels, we did 23 of those at an average of 574, so that's reasonable. And then sinister combatants gear. Now, this is probably the last of my sales of sinister combatants gear, because with 8.2 coming out, we'll have moved over to the notorious gear. Now, early reports of that have been that the sales haven't been that high, but give it time. As people have alts, I'm sure it will pick up, and people want to fill in the gaps of the gear that they can't get by other means. So what I'll probably do with this sinister gear is condense it into just one group and maybe try and sell off my stock and have ignore item variations turned on for my sales, just see if I can shift anything at a minimal price, no matter the variation. But that's for the future. At the moment, we've had some really nice sales here, particularly the cloaks. 3 cloaks of the Aurora there, 20,000 total. So some good prices there. Grand total being 175,000. I had a couple of Windwall hoods there. Those are for the waste of time achievement, so they're quite nice at 3,000 each. Now, in terms of purchases, I've only spent about 34,000 on purchases because, as I mentioned in my last summary video, I've moved the Tide Spray linen over to the Enchanting section simply because that's used in the Bracer Super Shuffle and nothing else. But I have included everything else here. So deep sea satin, 24,000 spent on that, average of 53 there. Embroidered deep sea satin coming in at 30, and then a few fell hide and bits and pieces there. So the grand total, 34,000 in expenditure, which gives me a tailoring profit of 140,000. So probably not as high as last month's, but considering that I was on holiday in the last week of June, I'm quite pleased with that. And we're shifting over from 8.15 over to 8.2, so there's a lot of shifting of markets as that happens. So let's move over onto enchanting, my favourite profession. So all of these are the old world bits and pieces. I still expect a few of these to sell carrying on forward, but there have been some good sales here. Mark of the Hidden Satyr, 3 of those at 3,600. Mark of the Ancient Priestess, I used to never sell that in Legion, and there's me selling one at 5,000, so that's really nice. And there's a Binding of Intellect cloak there and a Binding of Agility. So old stuff does still sell. And then here are my pacts and a few seals. Obviously there's a lot of pacts of haste here, 62,000 in total. Now I did do a couple of resets on the market throughout the month, so I expect to see some purchases of those, so that won't be full profit there. I expect the new enchants from 8.2 to do equally well. I just need to shift over and probably reduce the amount of selling these and introduce the new ones. The same with the weapons here. I'll see if I can just reduce the standard ones. I've got a lot of deadly navigation here. I'll look at what the next equivalent of that is in the next tier and then start selling those and hopefully get some even better profits. Because at 874, that's not a massive amount. And then we've also got a pet sale there of an enchanted pen. Windsong, 6 of those. Not a massive amount though, 132, but still ticking through quite nicely. We have a grand total there of 275,000 gold in sales. of enchanting. So usually my better profession, and it shows them. Then let's have a look at expenses. So expenses, I did do a big buyout here of packs of haste. I actually spent 32,000 with an average of 1,200. Now look at my actual sales. Where's my pack of haste? There we go, 44 with an average of 1,400. So it's only a 200 markup, so that's not a massive amount, but it was probably necessary just to push the prices up for that particular time. And that's 44 versus 27, so it's only taking half of my profits. And then we have a few other expenses here. The nylon thread there and the tie spray linen, lots of that, 57,000. That's one of my biggest expenditures, but 106,000 total, which means that my enchanting profit is actually more like the tailoring at 169,000. That's almost a token just on that profession alone. So overall, considering I was away in the last week, I'm actually happy with that. Now let's move on to cooking. Cooking looks on the surface to be quite good, 89,000 in total, a lot of bountiful captain's feast there, 67,000 in total for that, and a few other bits and pieces, northern spices there, the last of my vendor sausages there. But then moving on to my expenditure, I've had a massive expenditure here of red tail loaches for 48 average, so that's really quite expensive. And again, I haven't been keeping an eye on that. I don't know how many of these I've got left in stock, but obviously that's really hit my profits. We have a expenditure of 71,000. If we look down here, we have a cooking profit of 18,000. So not a lot at all, but as a secondary profession, that's okay. At least it's a profit. And with a chef's hat, it doesn't take too long to make things. So overall, it's probably all right. I just need to watch out, as always, for my purchasing of expensive things and overstocking. Again, this is all going to change with 8.2. There's going to be new meals and feasts out, so I'm going to have to update all of this with fresh new stock. So I'll see if I can shift the old stuff and move into the new markets. Now moving on to leatherworking for earthen. Now we have a lot of coarse leather barding here, 30 of those, 27,000 in total. So that's been a good steady seller. We've also sold quite a few drums of fury there, 230, 4,400 on that. And the turn-ins for the shimmer scale diving helmet and suit, with my prices as they are at a fixed price, we've managed to see 20,000 profit just in those alone. Or rather, should I say 20,000 in sales on those alone. Then again, moving on to the Sinister Cabans, again this will be the last of my Sinister major sales as we move over to Notorious. So a good mix of things here, a few at reasonable prices there, 6,000 average for the leggings, that's quite a nice one. And then a little bit of mail in there as well. Grand total of sales is 202,000. And then looking at my expenditure, I really haven't spent a lot on leatherworking at all. So I've got a fair amount of stock that I've used up. A little bit of raw beast hide there for the drums, and a lot of bloodstained bone there, because I think that's going to creep up in price. I'm not sure I'm going to see the average of 3 gold 29 for quite a while, so I have a decent amount of stock of that looking into the future. And then my leatherworking profit is actually a very reasonable 169,000. So those three professions, enchanting, tailoring and leatherworking, are all doing very well on their own, and then supplemented by cooking. So moving on to alchemy. Now alchemy I've split into over 2 characters, but I've included it as one here. So Awakening is still learning the upper levels of alchemy, but Awakening needs to do a lot of work on the reputations at the moment. And with 8.2 coming out and that all changing, I haven't quite gotten myself to a stage where I can be competitive with that yet. But we are making good progress. In support of that, I also have my other alchemist, who is a transmute master, El Morte. He's only level 85 or so, but he's really been able to push up quite a few sales, because he's been doing all of the things for the Vial of the Sands mount and Living Steel, and smelting ghost iron ore to get up to the daily cooldown for Living Steel. So we've had a few sales of those already, 7,000 on Living Steel, and then a few bits and pieces. These are kind of mainly random bits from a combination of both characters. As I've been leveling up my alchemy, I've been trying to sell what I can. Primordial Rubies made 8,000 on those, and Sun's Radiance 11,000 on that, and Wild Jade 12,000 in sales on that. So those are all fairly decent for my Transmute Master El Morte. So most of these sales come from Almorte at 56,000, but we will have quite a lot of expenses. Now I did buy quite a lot of Ghost Iron ore. Nix gave me a very good deal on that. I don't think this has fully been recorded in TSM because we did a cash on delivery mail transaction for that, and they didn't all quite come through. So what I've done here is I've added on an extra 30,000 onto my extra cost not recorded, because I do remember we spent 50,000 on Ghost Iron ore, so that was a lot of stacks of Ghost Iron ore. And what I did with Almorte, he's still got a whole load of it that we've converted over to living steel. So we will see more sales of that in the future. And then I've also bought some Spirits of Harmony when it's been a good price, average of 223, that's pretty good. The Motes of Harmony again, that's an average of 25, so 10 times that is 250. So under 300 is generally good. And then Golden Lotus, when it's been cheap, I've been buying it, depending on how it converts with the Spirit of Harmony, because you can get 2 Golden Lotus for 1 Spirit of Harmony. So that gives me a grand total of expenditure of 31,000. Add in those extra costs of 30,000, we've actually made a loss there of 5,000 gold. I'm not too concerned about that because a lot of that expenditure went into stock that I still have that I'm going to be able to convert into more sales that I've seen that they've been able to sell here, so I know that I'll be able to carry on using. I've still got another, I think another 47 or so transmutes of living steel to come, so that's another sort of 40 odd thousand at least to come in from living steel once I sell it. So Alchemy is okay, it's still developing, but it's spread over 2 characters, which works out really well, making the most of a Transmute Master and a Potion Master, one at max level and one at level 80 odd. Obviously in the future I can level up Almorte as well and maximise everything, but for now that's working out really well. Then moving on to miscellaneous. Now there's been a few different bits and pieces I've bought. I've had a few sales of random transmog, as usual, and no pet sales here that aren't enchanting ones. But we do have a grand total of 11,000 there. And then moving on to expenditure, I did buy a few heirloom bits here and an enchant there and a staff which I needed for leveling. I think that was Awakening needed that one. So I did actually end up spending more on my miscellaneous at 13,000 over 11,000, giving me a negative value there of profit of 2,300. That's par for the course really. Expect to have a little bit of expenditure. So overall, it's been a fairly steady month. Let's have a look at the grand total. So the grand total is 490,000. So that's reasonable. It's not as high as some of my other months, and it's at least 2 WoW tokens, more like 2.5 WoW tokens. So in terms of rate of gain versus expenditure, that's all good in my book. So how have we been doing overall? Let's have a look at everything month by month. So 490 is my June amount. Looking at Enchanting, it's down by about half looking at that. Tailoring is about right, and the same with Leatherworking. They've been consistent versus the last month. And then Cooking's been quite a lot less. Alchemy stayed about the same, and Miscellaneous is quite a bit less there. Normally Miscellaneous has been quite a bit higher. So that's the first time that's gone into negative values. My total for the year is currently 3.6 million. Now that's not quite Legion levels of gold making, but I don't think that's going to be the case because BFA has reduced a lot of the gold income potential. So I think overall people are finding lower gold amounts. But from my own perspective, I'm happy with that. Looking at the graph, you can see here that was quite a good month, and now we've gone down to about 500,000 here. But overall, these are all ticking along nicely. Anything over this 250 mark is generally good in my eyes, and obviously with more professions, more characters developing, I expect to see this get better and better over time. So that's my summary for June. Lots happened and there's a lot of exciting stuff coming out. 8.2 has just been released, so I've still only just started with that. I'm really looking forward to trying out all the new zones and maximising as much as I can in terms of sales. But for now, it's been a very, very good month. I'm really looking forward to July. If you do have any questions, please do put a comment below, or you can catch me live on streams every Sunday, or you can catch me on my Discord channel, or on Twitter and Instagram. All the links to those will be below. So I hope you've had a really good June yourselves, made lots of gold, and are enjoying 8.2 now that it's come out. I'm sure a lot of people will have flying. We can already see someone over in the corner here with flying. so it's only taken a week to get that far. I'm a long way off of that myself, so flying will come, but for now I'm concentrating on getting my professions up to the right level and looking forward to exploring new markets and seeing what comes up ahead. So until next time, happy gold making, and I'll see you very soon.